from the Crime Prevention Research Center. Dr. John Lott is with us. Dr. Lott, how you doing, sir?
Doing great. Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving.
I did. Thank you very much. Hope you did as well.
Oh, it was fun.
Excellent. So you write at the Washington Post with your colleague Lloyd Cohen, quote unquote, new research on gun laws and crime. You say flawed here, and this is something that we've seen in the headlines lately. Studies now say that concealed carry actually we saw what aggravated assaults and other violent crimes increase. These researchers say after concealed carry, shall issue concealed carry went into effect.
Right. Yeah, I was with Lloyd Cohen at George Mason University, and also joining us was Carl Moody at William and Mary. Look, there's this working paper by a law professor at Stanford and a couple of graduate students that got attention originally in the Washington Post, claiming that they had added 10 more years of data and that this additional data that nobody else had looked at, and that this additional data caused them to get new results. Lots of errors, both in the Washington Post piece and the original thing. First of all, there's nothing new about adding these 10 years of data. There are multiple studies. People can go to crimepreventionresearchcenter.org or just, I guess, crimeresearch.org, and you'll see the post that we have there that shows that they're recent, already published, peer-reviewed papers that look at data through 2010, as is claimed in this working paper. And, they don't find the same results that are claimed there. There's there are multiple problems with the paper. I'll just give you one example. They focus on the period from 1999 to 2010 and look at the states that adopt right-to-carry laws during that period. The problem is that in any of this research, what you're doing is you're comparing it to other states that aren't changing the laws during that same period. So you have a lot of states that adopted right-to-carry laws before 1999. They're being compared to the states that changed their laws during the 1999 to 2010 period. The early states tend to be more liberal in terms of how they issue concealed handgun permits. They tend to have lower fees, much lower training requirements, and the later states tend to be more restrictive. And what you find is that the states that adopted the laws for the first time during this later period actually issued a smaller percentage of their population with permits than the earlier states did. The earlier states had a bigger increase in permits during that last decade than the new states did. And they're assuming the opposite. They're assuming just because you adopted at that time, you're going to have a bigger increase in permits. And to me, the bottom line, and anybody who's read More Guns, Less Crime knows that what I think is the bottom line is where you see the most permits being issued, you should see the greatest drops in crime. And so when they claim that they're getting essentially an increase in crime during the last decade, what they're really doing is saying it's an increase relative to all these other states, and since these other states are having a bigger increase in permits, it's kind of what you would expect from the more guns, less crime hypothesis. The ones that have a smaller increase in permits shouldn't do as well. It's a relative increase. They shouldn't do as well as the states that are issuing the most permits. So that's just kind of a basic issue. And there are other problems with the data. So, for example, Alaska went from having very restrictive rules in the early part of that last decade to having constitutional carry. Well, presumably a lot more people are able to carry after they got rid of, I can't remember whether it was 12-hour training requirements, something like that, as well as the fees that were there to not requiring any of those conditions. You probably had a lot bigger increase. Well, they missed that because they didn't include that as one of the changes. But just more broadly, again, anybody who's read More Guns, Less Crime knows that there are different ways you can measure the impact of these laws besides this issue of looking at the change in permits. One of the things that a lot of people tend to do is just looking at the average crime rate before a concealed carry law goes into effect and the average crime rate afterwards. The problem with that is that if crime rates are increasing before the law goes into effect and falling afterwards, let's say it looks like an inverted V, then at where the point is right where the law changes, anybody who looks at that would say, geez, it looks like the law had a big impact. But the problem is the before average is the same as the after average there, and it would look like if you measure it that way, you'd say, oh, there's no effect from the law. And so there are lots of issues like that. And, I guess I kind of wish that when the Washington Post or some of these other places would go and do a story on this, they would go and ask some critics of this, unpublished paper what they think of it. But if I have a new study that comes out, I guarantee you the media is going to go and ask my critics about this stuff. But it doesn't seem to be too balanced. But anyway, people can get into a longer discussion about these things if they go to crimeresearch.org.
Talking with Dr. John Lott, the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And, Dr. Lott, it's interesting that you bring up some of the ways in which the stat, I don't want to say it's manipulated, but again, you have to ask some serious questions here. And casual readers of, whatever media outlet is reporting this, I don't think they're necessarily going to know these questions to ask. I don't think they're going to know, okay, well, what was the law, what did it look like compared to some of these earlier states? What were the number of permits issued in these states compared to some of the earlier states? And as you say, the media should do their research because certainly, as you point out, if there is a pro-gun study that comes out, and your letter points out that 2/3 of peer-reviewed research by economists and criminologists say that right-to-carry laws reduce violent crime. Certainly a publication that is reporting on that is going to get a comment by, someone with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, or they're going to talk to Adam Winkler, or they're going to talk to somebody to get that other side. But when it comes to this research, instead, there's almost that attitude of, aha, we finally found a study that says right to carry doesn't work, so let's just go ahead and report it.
Right. No, I think it fits their template. Here's the deal. There's been a lot of research on this stuff. And, you look at all the peer-reviewed research by criminologists or economists, it basically breaks down to over 2/3, almost 70% of these studies find benefits from right-to-carry laws. You find about 30% claims that there's no effect. You go through all the peer-reviewed articles, there's not one published paper by an economist or criminologist that finds a bad effect from either on murder, rape, or robbery. And you'd think that would mean something. I've been involved in a lot of academic debates. You go and ask other academics. Virtually any academic debate you talk about, there's going to be people on both sides of any issue. And here, this is pretty unique in the sense that you have the vast majority of studies say there's a benefit, but the other side of the published research has basically been no effect. So the entire debate isn't good and bad. The debate here is between most people saying there's a benefit and some small percentage saying that there's no effect. And, some of the comments I made earlier is also relevant to those who claim there's no effect. They're looking at just the before and after averages pretty much in these studies, and there's other problems there too. But even if you just take them at face value, just accept whatever claims they're making, it's unusual for there not to be people on both sides generally of this debate in terms of the peer-reviewed published research. And I think that if the worst that gun control advocates can say is that there's no change from having these laws, I think it makes it very difficult for them to argue against it. It's one of the reasons why now all the states in the United States allow concealed handguns.
Talking with Dr. John Lott, the head of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Again, Dr. Lott, if folks want more information, what's your website one more time?
Then go to crimeresearch.org.
All right. Listen, thank you again for coming on the program, sir. It's always a pleasure talking with you. Hope we can do it again soon.
Thanks very much.